Space is both fascinating yet equally terrifying. I often wonder how many of us just take a moment to look up at the night sky as you peer out to the endless void and try to comprehend the sheer vastness of it all. I guess that's why I find science fiction so interesting to experience, as it's generally set amongst the stars, which in its own way feels alien to me. Dead Space is one of those experiences, which I've been putting off finishing due to the stress of actually playing it. I never played the original, as I just couldn't bring myself to play any form of horror back then, as yes, I was a wimp, but I did watch a playthrough on YouTube all those years ago, and remember loving the whole premise of a derelict spaceship overrun by alien creatures. I only now realise just how many games I was missing out on, avoiding anything even remotely scary, which is why I was so thankful that they decided to remake this game so I could finally experience it on modern systems. In this video, I'll be looking at what I feel makes the game so effective at what it sets out to achieve, and basically, why I love it. With that being said, let's begin. Space is the perfect setting for horror, as it allows for a constant reminder that you are so far away from any form of civilization. You're isolated, and nobody is coming to help you. There is zero room for error in space, with the environment being a threat all on its own, having to contend with various hazards that you just wouldn't find on Earth, where a lot of other survival horror media tends to be based. In space, there is literally nothing. It's just empty, which just adds to all the other stresses of what we'll come to deal with as we respond to a distress signal from a spaceship known as the USG Ishimura. The world of Dead Space gets established quickly as we start our journey, where we learn of ships known as planet crackers, whose sole purpose being to extract and mine planets for precious resources. As one such ship comes into view, the design looks almost alien, with sharp angled panels protruding out like a rib cage, which feels like a recurring theme throughout the game, which we'll come to see as we continue. The skeletal frame evokes a feeling of something cold, void of life, and left to decay, yet also looking like an intimidating iron fortress, like it was built to withstand and last within the harshness of the environment it operates in. For me, the whole idea of building a fleet of ships that crack planets apart to mine for resources doesn't feel like a far-fetched concept by any stretch. Just look at what we do to our own planet, mining everything we can and destroying it in the process, which is a finite process and will eventually run out. When that time comes, what's to say we don't look beyond our own world to find resources elsewhere if there are no alternatives? Already, we have established that we're in an inhospitable place. After Earth has all but collapsed, approaching what looks like a derelict ship, receiving no response from anyone on board, we get closer only to crash land, with the only way forward being through. This intro, for me, perfectly establishes the feeling of dread for what's to come, as we welcome ourselves aboard the USG Ishimura. The Ishimura is above all a working environment, as it's not meant to be a racing or fighting ship. It's purely designed for function over form. The crew aboard would go about their working day the same many of us do. We clock into our stations, do a day's work and clock out. Can you imagine in the future waking up aboard this ship in outer space, suiting up in your rig, checking all your equipment is in working order, knowing that one slight malfunction could be your end, then clocking in for the day, going about your work duties, which are all an integral part of the system, then finishing your shift, leaving your rig, taking a shower, and back to the locker room to then clock off for the evening and head back to your quarters. I'd genuinely like to have seen and even played a portion of the game set before everything went to shit, because we only see the aftermath. But seeing how all the systems work together and how everything clicks into place to fuel the whole planet cracking process, I would imagine would be cool to have seen, as everything feels like it has a purpose on the ship. We do get to see a few systems that still work, like when we have to calibrate the exterior cannons to help with destroying space debris. Due to the nature of cracking planets apart, a lot of stray asteroid debris is created, so their function is to minimise the risk of any damage caused to the ship. The Ishimura itself feels like its own entity, almost biomechanical in a way, as you walk through its many hallways, hearing it creak and bellow. Gears, bearings and generators all slogging away to keep this massive thing in orbit. With everything straining and weeping under extreme stress, yet it can't give in or let up. It just continues to chug through the torture, longing for a moment of respite when it gets to rest, if that day ever even comes. We get to travel through the whole ship as we progress, with it all being interconnected and one seamless experience. Each section having a distinct feel to it. As we pass through the massacre on display, we see many of the crew's final moments. In a lot of games, I'm not overly fussed about collecting all the audio or text logs, but when an intriguing world or place is created, I love to learn about all the backstory, as we learn what happened to all the poor souls trapped on board during the outbreak. I was always ready to read the next file or listen to the audio logs to further explain this utter hellscape of a place. I love the words and phrases scrolled on the walls, because it feels like a genuine thing someone would write if they were in the position that they found themselves in. I know I definitely would. You can tell the messages that were wrote before the crew started going insane, as they actually can be quite funny, which is generally a coping mechanism when you know things aren't going to plan. Although it definitely gets even more mental the further down the rabbit hole we seem to go. I think that's what makes Dead Space so effective. It's heavily grounded and believable, even amongst the science fiction elements. We see the shower and locker rooms that would once house banter amongst co-workers, the medical beds for when accidents would inevitably happen, all of the engineering machinery with workstations and tools still ready for another day's work, and even the luxury suites of the commanders and captains that were on board. You can picture the ship when it was firing on all cylinders, with everyone coming together as a team to get the job done, enduring the hardships and celebrating the victories. It's quite haunting to see a husk of what was once a powerhouse of a starship. If I had to choose one of the favourite aspects of Dead Space, I think I'd have to go with the fact there is no gamified heads-up display, as it's all integrated into the actual world itself, which keeps you in Isaac's boots for the whole ordeal. It doesn't have the feeling of a traditional style of game, with markers and icons that litter the screen. Every action is in real time. The inventory menu is a projection in front of you, same with the ammo indicators above the various weapons. The laser reticle reacts to what's along its path, for exact precision on where your shots will land. You have to read logs while watching your back, hoping nothing decides to jump out of the shadows. There was even a moment when I was using the store, and Isaac kept looking to the side, which put me on edge, like something was approaching and he could see it, but I couldn't. Turns out there was nothing there in the end, but it still didn't bring me out of the world. There was no pause where I could relax. It feels like you're never safe and the tension is always there and never stops. We can't talk about this game without addressing just how fucking cool the suit looks. It's honestly one of, if not the best designed suits of all time. It's not meant to be armour, just an engineering suit that the workers need to protect them whilst working, having to navigate the many hazards that come with doing their regular day jobs. We again see design cues similar to the Ishimura, with the suit evoking an exoskeleton look, ribs of worn metal panelling anchored to the inner spacesuit, with the spinal column being the brightest section, clearly showing your vital signs, letting your co-workers know if you're in good shape or not. Which makes perfect sense when you think about it. If you're working in a loud, dirty and dark area, you need to clearly see where everyone was and if they were injured or not. The health bar wouldn't need to be seen by the actual wearer, as they'd already know they were in bad shape. So from a lore perspective, as much as a gameplay one, it's genius game design. Every time I upgraded the suit, I was looking forward to how it would change and look when you step foot inside the machine, as it jolts your head back, almost like you're being forced against your will, clamped tight for surgery. As more ribs are welded onto your existing frame, and you step out ready to face horrors that await on the Ishimura.
Isaac. Oh my god, Isaac. You made it.
They're everywhere. Shen, is he,
He's gone. Nothing I can do. What the fuck are these things?
The ones I saw, some of them were wearing Ishimura uniforms.
They're the crew? How the hell can they be the crew? Look at them.
Necromorphs definitely wear their inspirations clearly, reminiscent of John Carpenter's The Thing. But unique in their own right as we come to terms with their presence throughout our exploration of the ship, unrelenting in their attempt to kill us. Their name alone, invoking a grim fate, necrotic tissue morphing into some form of abomination. The skin flares off, bones crack and reform, with whatever's left of the person before morphed into a mass of violent, reanimated flesh. I think any creature from science fiction or otherwise with human characteristics definitely adds to the creepy factor, as you're reminded that this creature you just killed used to be an ordinary living person. Seeing these contorted shapes with human eyes approaching, arms hanging out where arms definitely shouldn't be hanging out, they're a well-crafted enemy when we have to strategically cut off limbs to stop them advancing, which goes against everything we've learned in the games to hit centre mass or take headshots.
It didn't die. We shot that fucker right between the eyes and it didn't die. Smith had to shoot its fucking arms and legs off. For God's sake, send help!
For some reason, the ones that really creep me out were these tall, gangly looking things. I felt like the game wanted you to experiment with different weapons, as it sends a variety of necromorphs at you, with each one needing to be tackled in a slightly different way. Having to be careful of the pregnant to not burst their stomach, or try not to run a mile from the twitchers as they barrel towards you. I always couldn't help but notice the screams and noises they all made, which did help me know when they were coming a lot of the time. But it definitely added to the overall atmosphere when you could hear them off in the distance, not knowing when they would make themselves known. What I loved the most about taking these enemies down though, was the peeling system that they implemented, as these creatures are built up of multiple layers of skin and muscle that you have to peel away at to reach the bones underneath that need severing. So as you're attacking them, you see their skin come away, revealing their skeleton structure. Now, I am weird, because I do love skulls, so as creepy as the necromorphs are, it was also pretty cool to see their skulls when you blasted their skin off, even though you've then got a nightmare-inducing reanimated skeleton thing with cold dead eyes bearing down on you. They definitely let you know that their only goal is to pursue and consume you, not relenting until you take off enough mass for them to yield for a time. They'll attempt to scratch and claw at you even without heads sometimes, and their appendages half dangling off. They're a pretty effective killing machine, as the many gruesome death animations will not hesitate to demonstrate to you. It doesn't take long for them to establish themselves as part of the ship, growing and festering like a parasite. Hosts get taken over quickly as they continue to evolve into deadlier variants, with hulking masses of flesh and bone coming together to form brutes and leviathans. I can only imagine this place reeking of death and decay, infected pus oozing out of every crevice. It's grotesque, visceral, and pretty disgusting, but we are warned of this as soon as we start the game. Dead Space isn't shy at letting you know what you're about to deal with. It's definitely an intense game that rarely gives you breathing room. Although, as I got further into it, I actually started to anticipate and look forward to enemies appearing when I was navigating around the ship, and almost felt disappointed when nothing took me by surprise, and I couldn't use my array of tools to defend myself. Especially when they're also fun to use, even if it's not exactly what they were initially designed for, as you're only an engineer, after all. Our protagonist. He's not a hero, a fighter, or a warrior, just a working class citizen. His engineering experience allows him to know his way around various mining tools and equipment, and someone who could diagnose and fix any mechanical issues they may have encountered with the ship's various systems. Usually, when it comes to video games, we're always the hero with all the answers, the chosen one, or some other power fantasy character. Here, we're just Isaac Clarke, an ordinary guy that just wants to find his girlfriend, fix what needs to be fixed on the ship, and head back home. But unfortunately, that doesn't go to plan, and he simply finds himself in the wrong place at the wrong time. Even without him saying much, I felt like I was constantly rooting for him, especially when everyone else that came along with him were effectively useless, and they asked him to do everything.
Isaac, we have a problem. The Valor's carrying a 12 megaton warhead. The crash hit the torpedo bay hard. I need you to handle that nuke right away, before something sets it off.
Handle 12 megatons? You know I'm not a nuclear engineer, right?
I don't need you to be. Just stabilize the warhead and eject it away from the Ishimura.
Christ, Hammond.
No one trained you to carve up monsters with a plasma cutter either. You haven't let us down yet.
Yes, I know this is a game, but I just imagine him saying to himself, do I have to do everything in this house or what? When they just sat in a room dictating what needed doing. But then again, I don't even think any of them were capable of doing what Isaac could do. This man goes through so much stress and terror in this game, I genuinely feel sorry for him. Yet he steps up to the plate every single time, even when the odds are severely stacked against him. You can sense his frustration with the implementation of different voice lines depending on his current health. After a tough battle, you'll hear him straining to talk, being in genuine pain, with sighs of relief when you apply heals to him.
It can't get us home.
Wait, maybe it can. If the Valor Singularity Core is okay, I could salvage it, install it on that shuttle. We're fucking out of here.
He comes across as pretty calm, all things considered, but I love the way we can stomp on dead necromorphs, which is the most satisfying fuck you ever when you do it multiple times on a corpse after they've caused you inconvenience by being in your way. It's like giving Isaac a chance to let off steam, because if there is anyone that needs it during all this, it's definitely him. The burden he has to carry when there's no end in sight to this nightmare, yet he just takes it like a trooper, ploughing through to complete the mission.
There's no time. I'm going in. Maybe I can cut it loose.
The Leviathan has a 10-kiloton mass. Do you really need me to tell you this is a bad idea?
Well, I'm all out of good ideas, so guess what's left?
The Ishimura is a harsh place. Health and safety messages are displayed throughout to remind you that pretty much everything can and will injure or kill you if you're not careful. Every moving part has heavy weight to it, displaying enough force to snap you into. It's a dense, gritty atmosphere that feels as though it's suffocating you with fumes, dust and grime. Flickering lights casting shadows, with sparks flying from failing rusty machines, hitting against your suit in the dark corridors. There is nothing clean or sterile to be found here. I've personally worked in engineering and industrial jobs that require the use of powerful lifting equipment and heavy PPE. And let me tell you, it's not a nice environment to be in. The potential for injury is massive, and you're often sodden with sweat and dust, so you're in a constant state of discomfort. I can't help but think about Isaac in his rig and thinking just how uncomfortable he must be. The extreme fluctuations of temperature he goes through, from the ice foaming space air to smelting hot furnaces. You get a sense of his relief when he takes his helmet off towards the end of the game, and the expression on his face says it all at what he's just had to go through. One of my favourite aspects of Dead Space is the concept of the weapons we use being actual tools that workers would use to carry out jobs around the ship. It's a brilliant yet simple idea. What better way to cut off necromorph limbs than with rip saws, line racks and plasma cutters that are designed to break apart dense materials, each having a harsh reload animation to reinforce the weight and working parts of these tools. I love the force gun reload, like it takes genuine effort to load the next cartridge, which would require a fair amount of strength to achieve. It's Dead Space's pump action shotgun, and my god it's satisfying. As are all the tools at your disposal, as you carve away at each enemy, saws burn red hot as they scrape across cold metal floors, ripping into flesh and bone, skin, blood and sparks flying everywhere. It might look brutal and messy, but it definitely works.
Stand clear of exhaust vents.
Even with every moving part and creaking bone of the Ishimura, there are times where all we can hear is our own footsteps that echo throughout the halls. The whispering voices in our head as we navigate through blooded corridors give us a sense that no matter where we are, we can't hide from this iron fortress. As the deeper we go, the more vivid the voices become. Reality starts to warp as our mind is altered. It makes you wonder if everything you're seeing is even real. Us is you. We're part of this ship now. It wants to take us in. We're becoming lost to the void, another damned soul in the circles of hell. The silent moments allow tension to build before we're met with the next victim screams. The anticipation of the ship itself starts to break down and fall to pieces. Everything is meant to sound eerie and take you by surprise. Nothing feels wasted, like every sound is a melody of despair, drip feeding into your paranoia. They say in space no one can hear you scream. As we enter vacuum throughout the game, we experience muffled sounds, only the faint hum of weapon fire, and Isaac's laboured breathing as our oxygen meter depletes and we hear his struggle for air. The soundscape seems to almost drain away as the silence surrounding Isaac is used effectively to amplify the gasps of breath to focus your attention on finding a resupply of oxygen. I've never liked time sections in games, as I like to take things at my own pace, but in certain situations all the tension and anxiety would disappear if there was no urgency in our actions, and would take away from a lot of the survival elements within the game. Dead Space never fails to remind you that you're in a desolate and inhospitable place, which can quickly take away life if you're not ready for it. Everything I've just talked about is what makes me think that Dead Space is one of the best survival horror experiences ever crafted. For me, the whole game is focused on achieving one thing: to put you through hell and place a simple goal in your mind. Survive. We're only human. We're not a hero trying to save the world. We're just trying to survive this unforgiving and grim place long enough to escape. And that's why I love Dead Space. I never feel like I do games enough justice when making videos about them, which is why I struggle to finish them a lot of the time, because I feel like there are so many small nuances and details that I won't have even mentioned, which add to the overall experience. I don't even know if anyone will watch this. It's more just my own thoughts put down in words, like I'm writing my own journey through these games and how I feel about them once they're finished. I want to create a library of videos that I can look back on and know why I love video games so much. Well, I have to tell myself that so the fear of perfection doesn't take over and I never upload any. With that being said, if anyone does watch this, then I hope you enjoyed it. Know that your time is appreciated. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day.